Hi folks, this is Karim Rao from Active Visual Idol channel. We will continue our lab, the Red Alert Labs, the video number 97. We have been discussing in the previous video the following. We have been working now for 7 videos on discussing a very important documentation which is called CIS Critical Security Controls Version 8 Guide, which is a documentation published and issued by Center for Internet Security Organization, which is a non-profitable organization that is concerned with issuing documents and recommendations for securing different operating systems on different applications, and actually in the security field in general. So this documentation is issued from this organization, which is how to protect yourself against cybersecurity attacks by implementing their critical security control guide. Okay, so we have discussed now for 7 videos this documentation. The first 3 points on how to secure your environment from cybersecurity attacks. The first step is to have an inventory of your enterprise assets, your hardware inventory for your enterprise assets. That means to make inventory of your servers, your workstations, your phones. This should be done. Okay, and the second step is to make an inventory of your software environment, how much operating systems you have, the different operating systems you have, the different applications you have. This is another step, or the second step. And these two steps are not only to have an inventory of your hardware and software, but from a security perspective, this is very critical, so you know every hardware and software in your environment. So if there is any rogue hardware or software is entered, or it is added to your environment, you should be aware of it. Okay, the third recommendation is to have data protection, to protect your data within your network. Okay, and to protect your data within your network, you should know the different phases the data pass through it, because the data have phases. Okay, the first phase of the data is the collection of the data. The second phase is the storing of the data. The third phase is the usage of the data. The fourth stage is to share the data. The fifth and the final stage is to archive the data or retain the data and then destroy it at the end. So you should protect the data in all of its phases. This is called data management cycle or data life cycle. So you should protect data in all of its phases. Not only it's a wrong assumption only to protect data during storage. No, you should protect data in all of these phases. Okay, so we have discussed in the previous video the last phase, which is how to archive and destroy data in a secure manner. Okay, and by the way, as I said before, you should protect data in all of its phases. So when you are collecting data, you should protect it during collection. When you are storing it, you should protect it during storage, or when the data is in rest. Okay, and during usage of the data and sharing of the data, which means data is in transfer or in transit, you should also protect data during transition, internally or externally. And at the end, when you archive the data, you should protect it, put it in a safe physical place, maybe in a safe with numbers. And when you destroy the data, you should use special software and hardware to destroy data in a secure manner, so no one can benefit from your destroyed data. Okay, so I have said in the previous video, I will give a practical example how we can implement data protection in our network. So for example, we have the Red Alert Lab. We will see how we can implement data protection through seeing all of the data life cycle within the Red Alert Lab or within the Red Alert network. So let's see how we can implement the data protection, okay, using the CIS guide and using the data life cycle guide provided by the Singaporean Ministry of Social Ministry of Singapore. And by the way, there is a very important documentation how to make a data management guide. Okay, I will discuss a practical one from the MAM University. They make a very good documentation how to make a data management guide for your network. This is very, very critical. You could not protect your data unless you have a clear data management guide. We will discuss this now. So let's, without further hesitation, let's go and see our Red Alert Lab. So to refresh your mind about the Red Alert Lab components, first of all, this is my laptop. It's had IP address 192.168.1.2, and then we are using the hypervisor. This is a kind of programs specialized in creating virtual networks and virtual machines. I am using VMware Pro or Workstation Pro 16, which is a very good hypervisor. I recommend you all to use it. This is a paid one, but if you need free, you can use VirtualBox. This is a second choice, and after that you can use maybe Proximus, maybe XNG, or a lot of actually free software, but this is the best for me. Okay, so in this program it creates virtual environment, VM virtual environment or VMware virtual environment. Inside it we create the red alert.internal domain, and this domain, it will take a range of IP addresses, which is a virtual network. So we have all of these, we make a domain and we make computers and servers joining the domain. All of these are in a virtual network. Each range is 192.168.1.0, and you can see my laptop is taken from the same range, so my laptop can communicate with the virtual machines. Okay, so I can share something from my laptop to these virtual machines. Anyway, so let's see what we have here. We have two servers. They have Windows Core on it. This is not GUI or not Windows graphical interface. Okay, and we have about 5 machines. Most of them have Windows 10. One have Windows 11. Some of them are PAW or Privileged Access Workstations. We have discussed this before. This is a very special workstation to connect to the Active Directory and make changes on it in a secure manner. Okay, this is very, very brief. Okay, so we have two servers. The first server is the primary server, which is have DNS on it. We have group policy management on it. We have DNS. We have a lot of things. It's called RACC01. The IP address is 192.168.1.8. The second one is the additional domain controller, which acts as the same time as DHCP and as a WSOS server, okay, and as a file server. Okay, so it's not only additional domain control, it's additional DNS server, it is a DHCP server, it is a WSOS server, it is a file server. Okay, the IP address is 192.168.1.9. so this is in short our network. Okay, I will add a couple of servers, virtual servers, which will act as application servers, so we can discuss how we can protect our data within this kind of setup. Okay, so let's see the new graph I have done. So let me show you all here. I need to make a slideshow and from this current slide. So let's see here. We have our Red Alert internal. This is our virtual domain, and then we have two servers. We all know these two servers. This is the additional. Sorry, this is the primary domain controller. This is the additional domain controller. We have Windows Server Core on it. This is very critical. And this is from security perspective. This is much more safer because no one can hack a server without a Windows Server, especially because it doesn't have a graphical interface. Most systems that doesn't have graphical interfaces are not easy to hack. Okay, and then we will add an application server so we can discuss how we can protect data coming and going out of an application server. This server will have an financial application. This is Excel, but this is a financial application. So we'll add to our Red Alert domain another application server which have financial system on it, and then we have another server, two servers. One will be for our NVR, consider this an NVR, or a camera. This is a server specially for connecting cameras to it and feed it back. So this is an NVR or network video recorder. Okay, this maybe it's an application, maybe it's a device. Okay, and the other one is for an HR system or human resources system. This is how we can, something like having a fingerprint devices to record the entering and going of your employees out of your network. This is something to record the coming of or the entering of your employee to your organization and the leaving of your employee to your organization, so you can decide his salary or to do deductions or whatsoever. So this is an HR application, this is a camera or MVR application, this is a financial application. And additionally, for our 2 servers, so we have 5 servers, I am adding these 3 new servers to the scenario because we need to see application servers, so we can see how data is secured between these application servers. So let's see, this is the HR system and this is the MVR system. Okay, so this is basically, and by the way, these are all VMs. Okay, so this is the camera, it's connected to the MVR, and this is the fingerprint device connecting to the HR system. These are all VMs, these are our virtual machines. Okay, and we will see later these are all VMs created within the VM Workstation Pro. So, and we have then the workstations, we have 5 workstations. Let's see here. So all of these are workstations. These 2 in specific are POW or used by admins, and the POW is a special workstation that are used to connect only to the Active Directory. And here I will show you all how we can the data transferred or the data protection when we use these 2 kind of systems. Okay, we have all these are virtual machines. Some of them have Windows 11. We have one machine that has Windows 11 and all of the other have Windows 10. So this is basically our scenario. And let's consider the other application servers to have Windows Server graphical interface 2019 on it, just to make the scenario more easy. So we can see here that these fingerprints, we all know that our data management cycle or our data life cycle begins with collecting the data. So collecting the data here means that your employees are signing in to the device. So this is considered a collection of data. You are collecting the employee fingerprints and it is sent to the application server. So this is the first phase of the data, collecting input or inputting data and collecting it and sending it to the application server. So this phase should be secure. Okay, and how we can secure this phase? First of all, we need to have a secure protocol used to transfer data from the device to the server, maybe HTTPS, maybe SSL, maybe other kind of protocols. I don't know what the fingerprint devices use. Anyway, so this protocol should be used to transfer data. And the server itself, you should not send the data from a device to the server unless this server is in a joined domain and it is authenticated by the domain controller. So this is another thing to secure the data. This server, it is joining the domain and it is authorized by the domain, okay, to authorized by the domain to work and begin collecting data. So the first phase of collecting the data, first to make sure that you have a secure protocol for sending the data to the server, and to ensure that your devices or your servers or your application server is authorized to work within your domain. It is authorized, it has joined the domain and it is authorized by the domain, okay, by the domain controller. And the users that will use or will connect to these application servers and getting reports should be within the domain and should be also authorized by the domain controller. Anyway, so this is one thing, this is one phase. And we should collect data also from the cameras to our MVR. This also should use a secure protocol for sending data. This is a feedback, so it's collecting fingerprints of the employees. Here it's collecting feedback, video feedback, and sending it to the MVR. And this also should be secure. You should secure the transfer of data, okay, from the camera to the server. And this means we are securing data in transit. Here data, it is not stored yet, it is in transit. So you should, in the collection phase, secure data in transit. Okay, this is one thing. Okay, so this is a kind of collection of data. Let's see another thing. Here we see our POW we see our POW workstation, and we see our financial workstation. Here also there is another collection of data phase. What are the collection of data between the domain controller and the POW, and between a normal workstation and the application or the financial application server? Here, me as a POW or working on the POW, maybe here I am creating users and groups in the Active Directory. So I am inputting data to my domain controller. Okay, so this means here the data is collected and sent to the domain controller. I am here creating users and groups and sending them to the domain controller to register them or to put them. So this is a collection of data, and the data is transferred from the POW to the domain controller. And we all know in the lab we have already secured the connection between the POW and the domain controller by cutting it out of the internet, so it's completely secure from hacking, and secure the connection between the domain controller and the POW using secure protocols, and using the Kerberos protocol to authenticate the PC to the domain. By the way, every PC and every server should be authenticated by the domain controller, and every user as well. So the connection from the POW workstation to the domain controller is secure using secure protocols. We have configured this using a group policy to secure the connection between the domain controller and the workstations, and by all servers. By the way, we have configured a group policy that every workstation talking to a server, its connection to the server should use a secure protocol. Okay, anyway, so I am collecting data here. I am creating users and group and sending them or registering them to the domain controller. This is a collection of data. Here we can see, for example, that maybe a financial or accounting member is putting some figures. Maybe he's making a balance sheet, maybe he's making an income statement. Anyway, so what he do is registering or inputting the data, and it is sent to the application server or the financial application server. This is a collection of data, and we secure, and the data is in transit. So that means that the data is collected and sent to the servers, and we are securing this connection. And by the way, another point of secure, we all know that we have secured the operating systems on all of these workstations and servers. We have guides to secure Windows Server, and secure Windows 10 and Windows 11, because it's not enough to protect the data during transit, but to protect the operating system on which the data is being transited from and to. So then we have also not securing the connection for sending the data, but we are securing the devices sending and receiving the data. So this is another thing. So now this is the collection phase. So all of our virtual machines are sending data and receiving data in a secure manner, or we are sending the data. Okay, in the upcoming phase or the third phase, we will use the data. So we need to get data out of the servers and use it. We will discuss it later. Anyway, for this is the collection phase or the collection phase. We will go now and see another thing. All of these virtual servers are using a NAS storage to save their data. Okay, so the data saved on this application server, it is saved to a NAS storage. The domain controllers having their hard disks created on a NAS storage. So all of these VMs have their virtual hard disks created on a NAS storage. Okay, so consider this is a virtual NAS or network access solution. So all of these VMs have their hard disk or virtual hard disk created on a NAS storage. So all of their data, all of this collected data is saved to the hard disk of this server, and all of this data is saved to the hard disk of this server, and these two hard disks on these two servers are saved to the NAS storage. The same applies for the domain controllers and for the application or the financial application. So all of their data are saved to what? To the NAS storage. So we store, this is the second phase, storage of data. Now the data is not in transit, it is saved, it is in rest. So we should apply here BitLocker encryption. So we should apply BitLocker encryption, and we should force every application server, the financial application server, the NVR application server, and the HR or human resources application server we should enforce their applications to encrypt the data before storing it. And if he wants to read the data, he needs to decrypt it before using it. So this is also another thing to know. So here we will apply BitLocker maybe, and the connection, of course, to the NAS storage is secure by all means, or it is connected through cables. And we should also maybe consider using SMB, or this is the version of sending data. We should use SMB protocol version 2 maybe to secure the transferring of data to the NAS storage if you are using it as a file server or using it as storage. So we should use secure protocols for sending data to be stored, and use BitLocker to encrypt the hard disk or encrypt the storage. And by the way, you can encrypt also storage on the workstations. This can be done actually, and we should do it. And we have discussed how we can do it when we are discussing the guides for securing Windows 10 or Windows 11e. The recommendation of the Department of Defense of the United States states that we should encrypt the hard disks on all of our workstations. Okay, so now this is the second phase. We have collect the data, we have stored the data, we are securing data during collection, we have secured data during storage. Okay, then the third phase is to use the data. Now here I am using my Windows 11 machine and Windows 10 machine to use the data. What we mean by use of the data here, for example, I need to create a report. So for example, here I am connecting to the NVR to get a report or to get a video in a certain time for a person. This is called we use the data. The data is stored, so here is recording audio and video feedback and storing it. Here I need to use this data. Maybe my CEO asked me that he needs to know a certain employee that have entered the company in a certain hour. So here I am going to the data stored on the NAS storage and using it to create a report or to fulfill a request. Okay, this is how to use the data. And during connecting to the server to get the data I need and use it in a report, this is also done in a secure manner, or I am connecting using secure protocols. And this here is data, it is in transit. Okay, another example, we need to connect to the HR system to get a report with the number of employees and the employees who have, for example, have sick leaves or something like this. So I need to connect to the HR server and get reports. So this is also we using the data for getting reports, and connecting to the server also is in a secure manner using secure protocol. So this is the usage phase of the data by getting reports. So use the data, we have collected the data, we have stored the data, now we can get data. We can get and use this data to create meaningful reports and meaningful database or meaningful figures or reports. Okay, maybe sales report or whatsoever. Actually, you can also add here maybe an inventory system if you need to have an inventory system. Okay, so here this is the third phase, and we can see that it's all secured, or we have securing them in all of the phases. We have the fourth phase, okay, which is to share the data. Let's see this one. We need to share the data to the internet. So, for example, I am sending the MVR video, for example, to my one of the maybe one of the partners in our company, or maybe if a police, for example, is asking for an evidence, maybe for maybe there is something happened in your company and the police is investigating something, and you are obliged to send the video of your MVR to the police, for example, on the internet. You should make sure that sending the video to an outside resource, especially on the internet, it should be done in a secure manner. You should use a secure email for sending the data, or to use secure protocols for file transfer, maybe using SFTP, or using an encrypted USB maybe to send it to the company. But here it's normally sending data on the internet, especially if you are using emails or websites. So you can send data and share it to the outside world using emails, so you should secure emails, or through entering data on a web website. Maybe you are sharing data on a website, so this also you should connect to web servers using HTTPS protocol. So this is another thing. This is data in transit, and you should secure it during transition. So this is the fourth phase of data. Here we can see this is the data cycle. We are securing data in all of its phases. Then we go to the last phase, which is archiving and destroying data. Here, for example, we have data collected over the years, and here the storage is completely full. Okay, we need to free some space from this NAS storage, so we are not forced to buy another storage. So for example, we are taking some of this data and archiving it on cloud storage. Okay, you are sending data outside our network to cloud storage, so we should secure the archiving of the data. You should choose a cloud service provider that are using secure protocols, and you should make sure that the data stored on his servers, on the cloud service provider server, it is secured and it is encrypted. And this is in the agreement between you and the cloud service provider. And sending of the data from the internal network to the outside cloud service provider servers should be secure using maybe HTTPS as FTP. This is one thing. If you intend to archive data inside your network, maybe by putting it on DVDs or putting on tape drives, so this is also should be done in a secure manner. The tapes or the DVDs should be put in a safe, and this safe, it is secure by a code or something. So this is also one thing. To archive the data, if it is in the cloud, you should protect the sending of data to the cloud, and also the servers of the cloud should be secure. Okay, and the last phase, it is destroying the data. This is done, as I said before, in a secure manner. Maybe if you are destroying papers or something, this should be done with a shredder or a paper shredder. If you are destroying DVDs or tapes, this is done using special hardware. If you are destroying hard disk, or you want to erase important data from your hard disk, you should format the hard disk and use some hard disk wipe data tools. So these tools will ensure that the formatted or deleted data from the hard disk will not be retrieved again using applications like recovering applications or so. So this is how you can see, this is the life cycle of our data within the Red Alert Lab. You should have, this is called data flow diagram. So you should have something like this in your network. You should document it, and here is the phases. So you should have this kind of data flow, so you can protect your data. And here we have fulfilled the third recommendation of the CIS guide to secure or to data protect. Okay, and we will see here he will get some sub points on how to make data protection. But here we have discussed all of the ways to secure data in transit and in rest. We will see, or let me continue working with the data protection recommendation. We will see CIS have some sub points on how to data protect. Mainly it will discuss what we have said now, but he is recording, or he's saying that again. But let me show you all how we can secure or have data protection based on the recommendations of the CIS. Okay, let's see here. So for example, we have said before that data protection, here is saying to develop processes and technical controls to identify, classify, securely handle, retain, and dispose of data. We have discussed all of these phases. He's saying that you should have processes and technical controls to secure the data in all of its phases. And we will see, I will show you a guide from Damam University on how something like this can be written and can be implemented. Okay, here he's saying to achieve this goal, he's saying that you should do the following. First of all, let me make it more further here. If we say, for example, the first thing to have data protection, establish and maintain data management process. We have already discussed this, but we should put it in a documentation, and this documentation should include steps securing data in transit, as we have seen here in this scenario, we should write all of these things. Securing data in transit to the application server, securing data in rest using NAS, all this should be written. Here you are, and we, during writing or during saying this or putting this in a documentation, you should address data sensitivity. So from here, for example, I can say that sending financial data from my workstation to the server, this is sensitive data. Okay, data owner, who is the owner of the data? Maybe the owner of the data, now he is the for example, the accountant that he is inputting the data. He is the data owner. Handling of data, who is handling the data? Okay, and how it is handled. Okay, I will show you all a documentation of at the MAM University on this in specific. Retention limits, how much time you need to retain the data. So we have discussed the phases of the data life cycle, but we should be more defined to see or to put steps. This is a general idea. We need to put steps how we can do this, how we can secure data in transit, how we can secure data in rest. For example, in rest we can use BitLocker. In transit we can use HTTPS. This should be listed. Okay, so here is saying you should have a documentation how to react with the data or handle the data, the retention time of the data. This is maybe in the archive phase, destroying of the data in the destroy phase, based on the sensitivity. So first of all, the purpose of the data management guide is to identify the data and how it is processed within our network, identifying and classifying the data. We have said also in the collection phase we should make classification of the data, which data is sensitive, which data is not. Don't worry, I will show you in this step, I will show you a complete data management guide from the MAM University, and we show you all this in steps. For this is the first thing, we need to make a data management process or guide. The second thing is to establish and maintain data inventory based on the enterprise data management process. So here they are the same. He is saying that you should have a data management guide discussing all of the data life cycle and to identify your data. For example, I have IT data, I have financial data, I have human resources data, to classify them and to see, for example, maybe IT data is very sensitive data, maybe HR data is less, so you need to have an inventory of the data or the types of data. He's saying that inventory sensitive data at minimum. So you should, for example, not make an inventory of all of your data. You should identify and classify and make inventory of sensitive data, so you know you will secure these kinds of data, okay, or have a special focus on it. Okay, the third thing is to classify. Here is the classification scheme. He's saying here, for example, you should make some labels for the data. So for example, we have IT data, we have HR data, we have MVR data. So for example, IT data is sensitive data, HR data is confidential data, maybe some data is public. For example, you're you are a company and for example, for in Red Alert Lab, if you are talking about army, so sometimes the US Army or the Russian Army or the Japanese Army have some public data published on their websites about the army, some news about the armies, maybe a new tank or new planes are added to the army. Anyway, so this is public data. You should identify, you have a classification of the data and label your data. Okay, so I think all of the three are concerning with having a data management process guide and inventory of data and classification of data. All of these should be included in the data management process guide. Okay, and I will show you all a practical example about this. And at the end, the data flow, you should know how your data flows between your network. We have discussed this in the previous slide. Here we have a very clear guide about data flow, in our environment. So to protect our data, we should have a data management guide. This is the first thing, I think, and this is one, it will include the the second two in it. So we have a data management guide. It will include the data inventory. It will include the data classification scheme. Okay, and you should make a documentation of the data flow. We have done this. Okay, so this is how you can protect, or this is the first 4 steps to protect your data. Let's go further and see. Here he is he's saying another things. Just a moment, guys. Here he is he's saying, let me get further here. So here we can see that, for example, he is recommending to encrypt data on removable media. So if you are sharing data, we have discussed in the share phase of data, on a removable media, it should be encrypted. This is one step. Encrypt sensitive data in transit to use, we have discussed this, using TLS protocols and open SSH protocols. If you are sending data to servers or connecting to servers to get data, you should use secure remote protocols to connect to servers. Encrypt sensitive data at rest. Here we have discussed this. Encrypt data at rest on servers application database containing sensitive data. Storage layer encryption, known as server-side encryption. You should encrypt data on the server, meets the minimum requirement of the safeguard. Additional encryption methods may include application layer encryption, as client-side encryption, where access to the data stores does not permit access to plain text data. So he's saying here data on servers should be encrypted, and the client connecting to this data should store the data, maybe a file server. It should not be done in plain text. I think he's saying here about transit data. Okay, anyway, so all of these 3 are concerning securing data in transit and in storage. Okay, segment data process and storage based on sensitivity. Here he is saying that you should not access sensitive data servers from workstations that are not secure. So for example, or on workstations that is not specially designed to connect to this servers using this or to servers having sensitive data. So for example, you cannot use the accountant workstation to connect to the domain controller. Okay, he can, even though it is secured, but it's not completely secure, or it's not secured enough to access the domain controller. This should be done using a PA workstation, because the PA workstation doesn't have internet access. So you should use a different workstation to connect to the domain controller. He is saying that different workstations should connect to different servers based on the sensitivity on the data on the servers. Okay, so for example, the financial application, it's not so sensitive like the domain controller. So this should be used, or a workstation should be used to connect to the financial system different than the one used to connect to the domain controller. We have done this before, or this is something called segmentation of processing and storage of data. So different workstations should be used to connect to different servers. Deploy data loss prevention solution. Implement an automated tool such as host data loss prevention. I don't know, I know this kind of solutions, but I didn't encounter one of them before or use one of them before, to identify all sensitive data stored, processed, and transmitted through the enterprise assets servers workstation, including those located on site or remote, so your data can be here on the cloud. Okay, log sensitive data access, another thing. Log sensitive, including modification and disposal. So you should log users accessing sensitive data. So maybe, for example, if you are putting, or when you are archiving data and putting in a safe, so if anyone wants to see archived sensitive data from the safe, then he should sign that he is opening the safe to see the data in a certain time. Or if, for example, I am using the PA workstation to connect to the domain controller, so to get a certain data, this should be recorded in the event log and should be logged. Okay, and even if you are trying to dispose, for example, maybe you have archived data, you are getting it from the safe, to destroy this should be written and should be documented. Okay, this thing. So all of these are concerning securing data in transit and in rest. Some of them using encryption of data, encryption protocols, securing the connection of the user to the server, logging the accessing to sensitive data, and at the end make data access control list. You should, for example, in our scenario, the accountant should only log to the financial application server. He doesn't have the right to access the domain controller or to access the Active Directory. Maybe someone in the MVR or the one that is maybe the security manager can access to the MVR, but he doesn't have access to the domain controller or Active Directory. This is done using permissions. Okay, this is using access control permissions. Or, for example, if you're having a file server and every department has a folder to put its data on it, so the accountant can access the data folder of accounting on the file server, but he doesn't have the right to access the IT data folder on the file server. This is done using data access control list, especially in this example. Okay, so here we can see that clearly to data protect, we need to make in very short. All of these recommendations can be summarized in two things. If you want to data protect, you need to make data management guide and to secure data in transit and in rest. This is our a very summarized thing. Okay, data management will include data types, classification of data, inventory of data, all of these things. And should you include data flow diagram with this data management guide. And the other things to secure data in transit and in rest, you can use protocols like BitLocker, using SSL. So all of these things, how you can protect your data when in transit and when in rest. Okay, so this is how we can protect the data. Let's see a practical data management guide. This data management guide, by the way, it includes how you can secure the data. It's not only the data management lifecycle, but it includes the ways to secure and backup and restore the data. Let's see one of the things at the MAM University. Let me show you all here. This is the data classification policy of the MAM. Let's go here. So here, this is a data classification guide, okay, to ensure at the MAM University information assets are identified, properly classified, and protected throughout their life cycle. Who is responsible? The quality unit. Okay, so this is something related to the quality unit. This is data classification, and it's reference from information security policy. We will discuss this one, and acceptable usage policy. So before going, we need to know some terms in this documentation of the MAM University, or the data classification documentation, or the data management process guide for the MAM University. First of all, he's saying availability, the first term, the assurance that information and services are delivered when needed. Certain data must be available on demand or on a timely basis. So availability, information should be available all the time, in certain times or all the time. Confidential means sensitive data must be protected from unauthorized disclosure or public release. Confidentiality, the assurance that information is disclosed only to those systems or persons who are intended to receive the information. So this is related to the data. This is related to the users using the data. Data custodian, individual or group responsible for classifying the data and generating guidelines for its life cycle management. Here, the group responsible for classifying the data, I think this should be related to all of the departments. So the financial department should identify its sensitive data, the IT should identify its sensitive data, the security manager should identify the sensitive data in his department. So these are done collaboratively between all of the departments. Data owner, who is the owner of the data? Maybe senior leadership, typically the dean. Here we are talking about university. Director or department chair level, with the ultimate responsibility for the use and protection of the university, is the data owner. He is not maybe it's not he can protect the data. This maybe in the IT department can protect the data, but the usage and the owner of the data is the scene or the dean. Okay, and data user, a member of the university community who has access to university data. Maybe this is a student or something. So the owner of the data, he's the creator of the data, or maybe he is the owner of the university, maybe. Okay, so this is different than the data user. Impact, a combination of confidentiality, okay, integrity. Confidentiality, you have done this term. Confidentiality, you have discussed it. Availability, you have discussed it. Okay, so let's see what is integrity. Integrity, the assurance the information is not changed by accident or through malicious or otherwise criminal act. So one of the things to data protect is to ensure the availability of the data. So by protecting the data, you ensure it is available all the time. You ensure the confidentiality of the data and the integrity of the data. Public means data for which there is no exception for privacy or confidentiality. Okay, so this is for the public. Okay, let's see some of the recommendations or the data classification guide. What he's saying here, let me show you all. First of all, here is saying that data classification, the classification of data helps determine what baseline security controls are appropriate for safeguarding. So you are classifying data to know if we should secure the data toughly, or maybe not taking very cautious measures to secure the data. Reasonable precautions and protections should be taken regardless of the classification. All UOD, okay, this is the university, an institution data has been classified into 4 levels. So here is classifying data or the university data into 4 types. High confidential data. Okay, it is data is classified as confidential when an unauthorized disclosure, okay, alertation or destruction of that data will cause a significant level of risk to the university. So he's saying how we can identify this is high confidential data when the hacking of this data or changing this data or destruction of the data will make significant risk to the university. Maybe this kind of data, something like researches, for example, something more. Anyway, so you have high confidential data. This is the first thing. Access to confidential data must, okay, here is saying that access this kind of data must be individually requested and then authorized by the data owner. Just for a moment. So here, just a moment, guys. Hello. Let's continue, guys. So here we're saying that high confidential data should be requested, so no one can access the data unless the dean of the university authorizes him to do this. Okay, so this is a very confidential data. The risk, the assessment of risk and access approval be determined by the data owner or risk committee. So here there is a kind of data that should be accessed by the dean of the university. This is a very critical thing to do. This is the first kind of data. Then confidential data, sensitive information that not necessarily expose the university to significant loss. So this is a kind of data. Just a moment, guys. So this is a kind of data. Okay, this is less important, but the data owner has determined security measures are needed to protect for unauthorized modification or disclosure. So this is less in importance than the high confidential data. Maybe this is something like financial data about the employees in the university, how much salary they take, their ages, their wages, or whatsoever. So this is another kind of data. Okay, then the third thing is the internal data. This is, he's saying that data classified as internal, this is here, that those are not explicitly classified as confidential or public. So he's saying internal data are all kind of data that is not classified as confidential or public. Okay, this is internal data, or this is the data transferred between employees inside the university. Emails, internal papers, whatsoever. So this is internal data. Public data, it is classified here that if it is hacked, it will not do any harm to the university. Okay, so we have 4 types of data in the Dammam University. First of all, we have high confidential data. This will be accessed only by an authorization from the dean of the university. Confidential data, this can be accessed, okay, but within certain departments. So for example, wages or salaries of the employees should be accessed by the accounting team. For example, wages and salaries of the personnel in the university should be, for example, accessed by the dean of the university. So it should be accessed by who is concerned to know this or have the authority to see this kind of data. Okay, and then the internal data, this is data between all of the employees in the department. They have all the access right to see it. Maybe it's something like internal memos or internal emails, so all of the employees in the university can know this kind of data. It is not so important to the employees inside the university, but it is critical not anyone from outside the university to see it. And then at the end, it is the public data, which is something like, for example, summer courses. For example, maybe for the university, it's like a disclosure or pamphlet for summer courses in the university, something like this. So these are the kinds of data for this is the first step, classification of data, okay, in the Dammam University. I will go here and will stop at this point. Here is saying this is how we can handle the data. So first of all, at Dammam University have identified the data, classified the data. Now he will show you how you can handle the data, and this is very, very important. It contains a lot of very, very well security measures, how we can handle the data during transit and during unrest. This is a very, very critical one. I urge you all, we will discuss it later in the upcoming video, but this is very, very critical and very, very good to know. So I will stop at this one, or at this phase, then we will discuss it in the upcoming video. Hope this video was informative for you all, and thank you all for viewing. Thank you so much.